Can you hear me, Janet? I see your face. Good. All right, perfect. So this is our first time trying the blended model. So we have a lot of our participants online. And we have all of you in person, which I love. So if we have to work through any tech stuff, just bear with us because it's our first time and it's Friday. So we are going to record the session for those who can't be here. So after I do the introduction, Scott's probably going to do that. Oh, even better. Okay. All right. Well, welcome. You good then? Okay. All right. So welcome to joining us at the SST. If you don't know me, my name is Lydia Brodigard. I am a consultant here that does special education and primarily secondary transition. And also from the SST today, we have Sherry Lawrence, who is, well, she used to be my co-pilot in this work as a CTE consultant, but Michelle, who is my friend in the back, she's still with us at the SST, but she's moving to a role within PBIS for Zanesville. That's part of the 11th district plan. So we're very happy for Sherry. And I'm very happy that she still agreed to do a couple more PDs with me. We also have Scott Eldridge. He is the man behind the computer today. Scott does PBIS school improvement. Some of you may know him. And then Holly Hall is another special ed consultant. With us and learn and build capacities for all of you. So I'm very happy you guys are here. If you remember last spring, we sent a poll out and asked if you wanted these networks to be virtual or online. It was pretty much like the virtual, but would like to have one. I said virtual or online, virtual or in person, and we wanted to have one in person. So we decided to do this one. So we have some exciting things planned for today, I think. I'm kind of super excited about this one. It's always good when we network and we bring some people together, and I think that it'll be beneficial for all of us. So others that I would like to welcome, the network is really about bringing all of the different partners in our community and in our region for Region 12 together. So I do want to thank Sean from OD for being here. He's going to share out and give us some updates. That's a valuable partner when we talk about transition, especially with our students with disabilities. I'm not sure if Autumn's, yep, Autumn is online. So thank you to Autumn for being here. And also our ESC partners. So Carrie and your Career Navigator crew, thank you guys so much for being here. They're a valuable resource. So if you have one of them in your district, thank them. They're building great capacity. I was able to go to one of their meetings and learn a lot of what they're doing. So working together, we're going to make sure we have all opportunities for our students. So I do appreciate you guys all being there. Those that you are in person, you have a folder that you picked up when you came in. Online, you guys have the online folder. If someone can drop that in the chat, I have it in the notes section. In that, you guys, in your folder, you'll have an agenda for today for the morning. Then you have a copy of the slides. You also have all of this electronically. So all of the slides have clickable resources that you can use later. On the right side, some of you had asked about this. I know Curry, we had talked about this because it was released one time, and I think Carrie and I have talked. How many mistakes did we find, Carrie? Oh yeah. So if I had given this to you before, I had asked you to get rid of it. So if you haven't got rid of it, this is the one that's on the website we're going to talk about a little bit later. It looks the same as the last one you had. So just, if you're in doubt, just tear the other one up or print one out, okay? But this is like the one pager that we can give out to build capacity and to help our families, our guardians, and our students understand the graduation for 23 and beyond, or what we're now calling Ohio's long-term graduation plan. So we're going to talk about this in a little bit. There's also a handout that Sherry's going to present on in a few minutes, and then there's an SST contact list. So if you don't know how to find us at the office by email or personally cell phone, you do now. So you can get all of that on there. For the online resources, we added a couple other things that we didn't put in print, but you can access that in the folder. One thing is our secondary transition newsletter. If you're not on the list, make sure today maybe you put it on a Post-it note. There are boxes at the table, and you give us your email, so you make sure that you get those. We send them out about every other month. The March one did go out this week, but I put it in your folder electronically. And again, that's full of secondary transition and career tech resources and lots of clickable links. Any upcoming PD that's specific to transition, we put in there as well. So you have all of those resources, and you're free to share those with anyone in your district or your region, more the merrier. So for today, what we would like to make sure that we accomplish is to provide guidance and resources to support secondary transition, to review some federal and state updates pertaining to secondary transition, and some of which will be included in the SUP, which is our state systemic improvement plan. And if you didn't know, the state systemic improvement plan for the next 5 years is around students with disabilities and the rate of graduation meeting federal graduation requirements. So really, if you're in this room, that's what we're always striving for, is to prepare our students to be engaged, so to be employed, enlisted, or enrolled. So hopefully after today, you have some resources to help to do that. We're also going to explore areas of need for the region and plan for collaboration, networking, and professional learning. This is the last network, so when we give you your surveys, please, please, please give us feedback so that I know how to plan for our networks next year and what your needs are. This afternoon, if you're staying with us, that is solely because of someone put on a survey, that's what they wanted. So this afternoon is a work group for transition. If after lunch, if you would like to come back from 12 to 2, we're going to work through a few scenarios, and we're going to go through the transition planning process, looking at what AATA, that age appropriate transition assessment we want to use. How would we identify the PINs, the preferences, interests, needs, and strengths, take those needs to write a goal, and then what services we could use to support that goal. So it's just going to be like a work group, and we're going to hopefully give you some ideas of what we can do. And we're also going to address some questions about transition and CTE pathways. You also have a copy of this in your folder. It's just the agenda, what we're going to go through, and all of our community partners that are going to share out. And then our guest share. This wasn't on the sign-up sheet that you guys had, and I don't think he's online yet. It's probably going to come a little later. But some of you have heard me talk about Jeff Berk. I'm going to introduce him in a little bit, but this is where I get to feel like Oprah. I told you guys, if you came, you know, I'll get a prize. So today, everyone here gets a copy of Jeff Berk's book. He's an individual that sustained an injury and ended up with a learning disability and was told that he needed to be like pretty much in a self-contained classroom. He and his mother battled back, used community resources. He ended up going to WVU the same time I was there. You didn't remember on the Mountaineer. And he ended up being an academic and an athletic scholar through WVU. And now he came back to his roots in Ohio, and he works in career tech. So I'm super excited for him to share with you guys his journey. I think that this will be a resource, especially if you have that one tough kid that is on the verge of giving up. If you don't get the feels and realize that it can happen after listening to Jeff talk, I don't know what'll happen. So you guys are going to get a copy of this. So that's your Christmas in March from the SST. Okay. So when we think about transition, if you've been coming to the networks, you know that we've been moving that little star around, and we started with the taxonomy for transition programming. We've talked about family involvement and family engagement. We've had Susan Larson come and talk to us, which is our family engagement person here at the SST. We've worked through some program structure. We talked about your special ed policies, what we need to have in place for secondary transition, how we're going to think about how we're evaluating what we're doing. Is it working? Are we able to see that our students are leaving us engaged? We talked about interagency collaboration, especially because of Scene and Autumn, who are always here and wonderful to share out through OOD, our EFC partners, our Board of DD. We talk about that. We've talked about student development. We've offered quite a few times the student-focused planning. I know we offered it at Zanesville, at Switzerland, at Riverside, Riverview. We've offered it here. We've offered it at ECO, ESC, and this month will be the last time I'm offering it this school year, but we're also going to do that at Jefferson County ESC. So the link for that is in the newsletter that you have. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, you get a plethora of resources. You'll walk out with your arms like this because you get the teacher's guide, the student workbook, and you get a bell ringer that all talks about student-led transition planning, and you get some other resources. So that's a good one that you might want to check into. So I put the star in the middle today because this is the last network of the year, and hopefully what we touch on today is going to be a little bit of everything. So that's why we've moved the star. At the beginning, I asked you to take a look at these checkpoints of taxonomy and see where you were and what areas you needed to grow in. So as we're looking at this slide, there are highlighters in those boxes on your tables. Maybe take a minute, and if you're online, take a minute and look, do we have this in place? Is this still something we need to work on? And if there's something you still need to work on, again, put it in the survey because that's what we'll plan for next year. So help you meet those needs. Okay, I'm going to go over just a few updates that we thought was important before we move on. One of the biggest ones, we push this out on our newsletter. If I've met with you, I've given it to you. If we've been in your district, is the website Unlock Your Future. So the Unlock Your Future website, all of the initiatives and all of the activities that ODE has pushed out throughout the last 2 years since they introduced the graduation of 23 and beyond and Ohio long-term graduation, they put it in one place. So Unlock Your Future has information about the seals, it has information about the competency, and it has a graduation fest. So this is it was targeted to build capacity with your parents or guardians and your students, but it may help you explain this to your peers back in your district. The graduation fest, when you click on this, there's a short video that the students can watch, and then they can sign up for prizes. So that's one area you want to make sure you share out with them. The graduation overview, when you click on that, that's that one pager that I put in your folders. So this is the most updated one that is a good resource to give out. When you click on the news, it takes you to the Twitter account and it gives you whatever updates are through the department and graduation. There is a link to the Ohio Department of Education landing site for graduation. And then there's a link to Ohioans Jobs, since that's one that we're going to talk about a little bit later. It has resources that are all together for Ohioans Jobs. And remember, these are for grades 6 through 12. Working with a few districts, I had someone ask me, why are we talking about this in 6th grade? Well, what happens in 6th or 7th grade to us that are in the room? Students turn age 14 and we start transition planning. Also, if you are looking at your graduation or your dropout early warning system, early indicators, we are starting to track, hopefully before 6th grade, but definitely 6th grade. We're looking at the attendance of the students, the behavior, some just teacher data that can say, are they tardy a lot? Are they doing their work? Are they turning their work in? So these are all things that could be part of your district's early warning system and review of the team to see if our students are on track for graduating or at risk for dropping out. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the Ohioans Job in just a few minutes. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Also on this site, navigate all this for you guys, the seals. You can click here to get the brief blurb of the seals, but the seals are also all defined down here. I'm going to pick on the science seal first, which is the state defined seal, and it tells you how you can earn that. So remember, those kind of changed last year. And we knew that if you earn a final course grade that is equivalent to a B or higher in an advanced science course, earn proficient, and all of these things, right? That you could earn this seal. What they've added on this website is our students who have more significant cognitive disabilities who may qualify for the alternate assessment, they now can earn the seal by scoring basic or higher on the science assessment. And it's the same with the citizenship seal. They can do that for their history part, social studies part. They can also, if they score that, they can earn that. So there's just a lot of information on this website. So that's one of the good ones. We had a district that we did some work with, I guess it was probably last week, and the school counselor had put this in her email signature. So anytime she sent an email out, it was on there. Some districts have gone ahead and put this website or put this link to the website on their school website. So any way you think that you can share this out and to get more information out about graduation, because if we all are still learning and we have questions about it, imagine the people who aren't working and living in it every day. So that is just a really valuable resource I would share. I also put a link on here about indicator 14 exiting and student data collection. So how many of you remember the OLTS, the Ohio Longitudinal Study? Okay, so we used to have, if you had an indicator 14, you had to attend a training with us about exits and follow-ups. Now, all students who exit, not just students with disabilities, all students are surveyed. You may not know this, but I can guarantee you your EMIS coordinator knows this. And Michelle's shaking her head because your special ed directors also know this, because if they have an indicator 14 finding that came out on their profile, those indicator releases earlier this year, they know that that's the year the data is being collected. So this website kind of goes over that about those post-school outcomes. Again, I'm not going to go too deep in the weeds with this. If your EMIS coordinator or your special ed director says something to you about following up with students, yes, all students must be followed up. And this just gives you some information. It gives you a template and some questions that you want to make sure that are addressed for all students, especially that could meet what we need for indicator 14. We don't have to pull out a separate report now. The state will do that for us. You won't be having a separate survey for them. One thing that was just released, and I put this in the newsletter, is the OLTS annual report. So while there aren't going to be separate surveys, that OLTS annual report will still be released. So if you were part of that last year's annual report was just released, and they've just put it on the website. This would be a good resource to take back if your team is looking at data and ways to improve. This is a summary of the cohorts that completed the OLTS last year. I'm not going to go through this whole document. I just want you to know that this is where you can find the electronic version. Special ed directors, I have requested from Kent State, who puts this together, to have hard copies sent to us. And as soon as they get here, all of our districts will get a hard copy so you can have that. But all of the information, and it does give us some good information about our students with disabilities. It talks about what the percentages are as far as male, female, but it also goes into the different categories, the exceptionality categories, how they were labeled for services. It talks about how they're engaged, and also a lot of student data feedback, how they felt, or did someone help them? Did they think the process was good? So this is all good data to look at. We're not going to spend a lot of time because we could take like an hour just to go through all these charts, but I definitely would take a look at this. I'm going to pick on Justin just because of all of the efforts that I know that you guys were doing about offering different opportunities. There is really good data. And if you looked at trend data about those who are going to four-year colleges versus this 2-year, or just going to other training or going straight to the workforce, we should look at that because our students are telling us something. So if you haven't looked at it before, look at it and then go back and think about what you're offering within your districts, or even our ESCs, what we're offering for career pathways and different activities. So lots and lots of data there for you to look at. Sherry, is there anything else on that you want to say? Okay. All right. The next couple of things that I put up here is how many of you offer or have offered web exams or work keys to your students? My career navigators are like, hello, yeah, okay, Caldwell, absolutely, okay. So what we found out regionally, not those of you in this room, because you're already actively attending things and getting good information, right? Is that sometimes our intervention specialists weren't aware that we could put accommodations in the IEP for our students that would translate over to work keys and web exams. And I know I talked to the career navigators about this, right? So we want to make sure that if we know that they're using one of those alternate pathways, we definitely want to make sure they have their accommodations. Some of the web exams don't maybe go through the intervention specialist. They're with the CTE pathway, or they're at a career center or vocational center. And sometimes those individuals haven't had that capacity built yet to know that they can use accommodations. So Amy Szymanski from ODE gave us really good resources and went ahead and pinned them straight to where we need to go. I put the link in here for your accessibility manual from the state. I've given you that before. Just remember, it was updated in September, so you need to make sure you're looking at the 8th edition. But when you guys do go to this, and try not to make you too dizzy, on page 6, when you go back and want to show someone, this chart looks at the assessment program, the name of tests that could be included, and then relevant information that could be found within this manual. Just briefly, I'm going to show you. So on your IEP, when you're looking at district level assessments, web exams and work keys, among other things, are listed in this area. So we know this is where we can write in for accommodations for web exams and work keys. Now it does tell you to refer to the assessment publisher's information. So this is where sometimes people, oh, they don't give accommodations, or they're standard, or they're universal. That's not totally true. So I wanted to give you guys the links specifically to those. So we know if we're going to write an accommodation in the IEP, it needs to be listed in the ETR somewhere, right? Because we always want to have that tie back. So think about that first. So we know that if the student has those accommodations, we can click right into the web exam guide. And these are for students with IEPs or 504s. So if you have kiddos that are on 504s, they can still get these accommodations, but we need to have them listed somewhere for them. There's accommodation examples listed for time and a half, double time, unlimited time, paper prints, interpreters, all of this stuff, okay? So this tells us what we can put in there. Also, we linked, if you have a student who does qualify and uses text-to-speech, can you use that? There's information here about text-to-speech for web exams, okay? The other one that Sherry, I believe, added in and found was there are practice exams, pre-test and practice exams that we can work. So if we already know that we have a student that may have trouble passing these, or they need a little of that pre-work, you can go to web exam, and this is the link, and it shows you each of the areas that you could be tested on web exams, and you can do some pre-tests and some pre-work on that.
The intervention specialist may not have access to web exam because they have to be loaded underneath that teacher via the web exam platform. But you can go to the career tech lab teacher and get that lab teacher to help them access that information. A lot of career tech schools are using those pre-tests as part of their OTES data support to show the amount of growth that students have over time. So I would really encourage your intervention specialists that are working with students taking web exams to use those pre-tests and practice tests with them. Any questions on that?
So on the eve of testing, we wanted to make sure this was fresh, right, for you guys, and to go back and share out. And maybe this is when we need to take a look and see what we have listed for the district level assessments if we have students that are taking web exams or work keys. And I had a similar conversation with some of the career centers that they needed to check that, or if we know that we have a kiddo that maybe is a sophomore and we're getting ready to do an IEP this spring that's transitioning to a career center or a JVS or something, we might want to think about, instead of sending them there and then having to open up an amendment, if we know they're going to go into a program that's going to need to take web exams or work keys, let's go ahead and be mindful and put that in there. It doesn't hurt to put it in there. Okay. Any questions, thoughts? Did you already know this? Did you already know about the web exam stuff? Some are saying yes, some are saying no. Okay. Well, if one more person knew than before, I'm okay with still sharing. Okay. All right, that's really all of the most recent updates that I have to share that I haven't already, or Sherry hasn't already sent out. Those were the most pertinent ones that we wanted to go over today. So this is a time I always share if the ESC partners have any updates. So the ESCs that we work with, who usually attend our meetings, are East Central, Jefferson County, OV, and Muskingum Valley. So I don't know if anyone online has anything to share, or Carrie, if you guys have anything to share, you're free to. If not, just we can move on.
Move on.
Okay, we can move on. I don't see anyone online unmuting, so. All right, well, our next up, which is our interagency collaboration, is our opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities. I know Autumn's online and Sean is here in person, and Sean, you did have some stuff to share, right?
Yes.
All right, do you need the computer?
Not necessarily, but
Okay.
I can stand in front.
Oh, I can put this right on you and they can see you. Don't you worry. Hang on. Look away, look away. There we go. It's all you see.
All right. So, good morning, everyone. Good to be here and good to see some of my peeps. Shout out to Zanesville folks. My folks from Philo and from Noble Local, Mr. Rich over there. So appreciate seeing everybody take advantage of the training this morning. So we are at the tip of the spear, so to speak, for the biggest efforts that we do during the year for transition, that is summer youth. So we are in the process of canvassing with our providers, our community providers. They're posting their work sites to a centralized list. And some counselors I know are even starting to do outreach to the families to let them know what's available. So this year, as you may have heard, it's just a little different with us. We are doing for the summer a level 1 and level 2 service for our folks, our young people. The level 1 service is going to be more of a 10 to 12 hour a week service that will go between could go 2 to 5 weeks. It depends upon the provider and how they have it structured. So the intent for the level 1 service is for our younger students, our 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and some of the students that may need a more slower start than jumping into something more intense. As well, we'll have a level 2 service that will be available for our folks, our young people. It'll be 20 hours a week, 4 to 5 weeks. Now, I'm going to put a shout out to my teacher friends to keep us in mind for referrals, as you already have, but from the standpoint of utilizing us to help the student to obtain several of their graduation seals. The work-based learning seal, students are required to have 250 hours of work to be able to get that. If they participate with summer youth, if they're in the level 2 service, they could get 80 to 100 hours potentially. So they can get pretty far along towards that. So we ask you consider utilizing our service to help the student to help them to reach that goal with the level with their work-based learning seal. As well, the OMJ seal I understand the students need to have 3 mentors to help complete that. OOD can be one of the three mentors, community mentors as well. They'll, if the student has worked with us with pre-ETs or with summer youth, they'll be familiar with the job coach or the our community partners, and they can as well be a second community mentor too. So that can help the student as well. So we want to keep us in mind for helping to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, with those 2 seals. The other thing that continues with us is the College Support Awards. Many schools think of us for the low incidence students, but keep us in mind for the students that have learning disabilities, those that are college bound or may be able to take advantage of post-secondary training. In the fall, we started awarding students, targeting those families where students may end up with loans because their EFCs were high. And so in the fall, we offered $500 college support scholarship for those students. And then in the spring, we increased it. So for those students that met those criteria, we increased it to $2,000 for the college support scholarship. Now, we've always funded college for our students. So the lower the EFC, the more money we're able to provide as sponsorship. So some of the students that, for example, if a student receives Social Security benefits, they have a 0 EFC as far as we're concerned. And so their college and university tuition could be fully paid. So we'll be glad to meet with those students with learning disabilities where this makes sense. I'm glad to provide that sponsorship for them. We had a statewide transition meeting. Some of our SST partners were on the call, as well as folks from ODE and BD. One of the things that was rolled out was a new pre-ETS video. And the pre-ETS video.
We're watching that this afternoon. You come back, that's part of it. Good segue.
Awesome. I wanted to put a plug in. Some of you may be familiar with pre-ETS, having just the 5 services, the 5 modules that the students are learning. It's the soft skills services, the job exploration counseling. They're learning about jobs, work-based learning, where even in some cases you're going out and seeing jobs, self-advocacy, with learning about the resources around them that can help them as they move through their high school and into adulthood. Post-secondary options, thinking about life after high school, college, and additional training that they might be able to take advantage of, and workplace readiness. Thinking about developing resume, interview skills, and the skills necessary to be successful into employment and independent living. We've been offering that through our community partners, and many of you are familiar with our community partners coming in and working with the students. However, we have an interest between OOD and ODE of having the schools become providers for the pre-ETS services as well. I'm sure, as Lydia will touch on this afternoon, there's grant funding that's available to the schools to study this, to see how they can put this together. Part of the pre-ETS video highlights Edison School District in Milan and how they've been able to do that and make a success of that. So I want to encourage you all to become pre-ETS providers, because there's only so many community partners that we have, and there's many more students that are eligible that can take advantage of this. So we encourage you all to really seriously look at that. I've talked about that before when I was here, and want to bang that drum again. So I want to pass it over to my partner, crime there, Autumn. I think she's got a couple other things that she wants to share.
Thank you, Scene. So in addition to all those wonderful updates that Scene provided, another thing we wanted to just highlight is that in addition to our summer youth experience over the summer, we do also offer what we call YLF, so Youth Leadership Forum. This is like a 1-week experience for juniors and seniors with disabilities to really kind of have that type of leadership experience, that self-advocacy, and really a period of self-discovery, really. So there are going to be, I think there's going to be 7 different regional options for that. There is also going to be a virtual option for that. So we have a lot of choices for that experience, and that could be something that talking to your OOD counselor, if you see someone that you think might really be a standout, that could be something that could be incredible to put on their college application or just to give them a phenomenal experience for life in general. So that's something that also will be coming up this summer, and all of those will occur in June. And then another thing that I am no expert in, but our budget will be up again in July. And so we've been hearing some exciting things coming down the pipe about the new budget and just continuing to increase and expand OOD in terms of programs, in terms of staff, and just the ability to serve more and more students in more and more ways. So we're excited about that. We're excited as we continue to learn more details as we get closer to the summer, but just wanted to share that OOD is continuing to grow and continuing to expand, and we're excited to partner with everyone while we do that. So thank you for letting us participate today.
Thank you, Autumn.
Thanks, Autumn.
Does anyone have questions for Autumn or Steve?
I do. So I'm the career navigator with Rolling Hills, and I guess they've had a little bit of confusion going through OOD. So you guys as OOD set them up, allocate funds, and then it's the business partner, community partner to kind of allocate those funds with the student moving forward after we sign the IRE or the whatever plan it is that they have. I forget what letters they have. I guess I'm confused on like who starts allocating those funds, whether it's phone minutes or uniforms, like who pays for those? How do those get used to make sure that we're getting our kids into those jobs and those positions?
Yeah, so once an OD case is open, whoever the assigned counselor is will work with the student and the family to determine what the needs are, and then OD can pay for whatever the student needs.
Yeah, and I understand that, but like who makes that decision of like, okay, we're gonna go purchase these right now? Is that like I know we partner a lot with Cedar Ridge. So like would Cedar Ridge be making those like?
No, it'll be up to the counselor.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, let's see. Lydia, do you want to go ahead and move to Claymont and put me at the end and see how much time we have left?
We can, so we can stay on.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do that.
All right. Well, let me come back up there. That ties into the next share.
I know,
So-
that's why.
Yeah, so if you guys remember earlier in the year, we gave you all the evaluation roadmap that came out from ODE. The next effort I told you guys about was the transition roadmap. Well, it's February, or no, it's March, I still don't have it, but I don't even remember what day it was now, seeing we were on our community of practice meeting, but anyway, Amy Samansky did share that the transition roadmap is now in communications with the department, which means hopefully within the next month, it's going to be pushed out to that website. And then it will also be pushed out to all of you. We'll put it on our website and we'll share it with you, okay? But until we have that, some of our districts have decided to go ahead and take a step farther with that, make sure that they have something in place, and I'm gonna get us to where we are here. So we were in a meeting, and Heather O'Connor from Claymont had shared out that they had started an effort to increase student engagement and exposure to the Ohio Means Job activities. They put a locally defined roadmap. So I'm asking her to share this as a networking opportunity, because she's okay if we harvest her ideas and tailor them to the needs of your district and your students. But she has a roadmap that Claymont has used, and they start as early as 6th grade, and they've embedded some activities for exposure to Ohio Means Jobs readiness seal and just Ohio Means Jobs activities. So we thought that this would be a great place for networking, and also for Claymont and Heather to share out what they've done, so that you can take back when we're thinking about the process that you will put locally in your decision, in your district. How could you help your intervention specialists support our career navigators? If we have some of those job coaches, how could we make sure that we are moving through secondary transition with meaningful activities, and also helping them earn one of those seals and get exposure to the workforce? So Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you want to share your screen, or do you want me to pull up the roadmap?
I think if you can pull it up, that'd be great, but I also have it. I can share it, but that'd be fine.
Okay, I put it as a PDF in their folder, so I can pull it up as you're talking, so you can go ahead.
Okay. Okay, great. I was planning on pulling it up, but I'm using my phone until I get my Zoom set up on my computer again. So what I created was, it was just one of the biggest issues that we've had in the district is dealing with transition and what really goes into transition every time our teachers are doing an IEP. It's been a concern for a while. So I thought the best way to maybe help them out is to set up something that's consistent throughout the district. And so I sat down and worked with our guidance counselors and things that they like to see the students have by the time they graduate. And this also ensures that they will have an Ohio Means Job seal. So that was part of the reason why we set this up as well. So if you have it, I don't know if it's pulled up. Thank you. At the top, thank you. At the top, you can just basically see that I put our OOD contact and put our DD contact. I request that we always invite them to our meetings when appropriate for DD, and then also OOD all the time once the students start. And then basically what I did at each grade level, I just gave them information that they could do. So at 7th grade, we have them obviously inviting OOD, but I wanted to put something in for the students also, so that they were learning a little bit more about themselves and how to advocate for themselves. So you'll see that there is always, invite the student and then their portion of what we need them to talk about in the meeting, just to give them some ownership. And then there's a post-secondary. And we always have to base a couple of activities off of our assessment results. But then the next thing that we're going to have them do is create a folder and put everything in that folder. So by the time they're a graduate, everything they've done is in that one folder in their drive. You have links. These are live links, so my teachers can just link on those and it'll take them to the website. I don't want to take a ton of time because I hear you guys are a little bit tight for time, so I'll go through this quickly. But they're live links.
We're back on track. You're good.
Oh, okay. Well, if anybody wants me to share this with them or to, send them the electronic copy so you have the links, I can do that. Just my email is hoconor@claymontschools.org.
And you guys already have it because I dropped it in the shared drive, so you already have it.
Oh, good. So the links are there. I did do, integrated employment post-secondary, just so everybody kind of knows where they fall in the IEP. But as you can see, I just did this for each grade level, and we build as we go through. The student starts to get a little bit more involved in the meetings, which is so super important. And then we also start kind of targeting what the students want to do for their future at each level. So if I could just, that's basically what is happening throughout the entire document. But the ultimate goal was to not just do this because we have to, but for it to have some benefit and for it to help the students think about what they want to do. We do go back and revisit. One of my favorite websites was Schmoop, the Real Poop. It's fantastic. It has so much information on there for kids. It tells you like where jobs are, how much they will make, what a day looks like for them. And there's like every job you can think of under the sun on there. And it is probably my favorite website to get that. You have to kind of navigate through it a minute, but you get there. It's really a good one. And we do have them doing that twice. We have them doing that in the middle school, I believe, maybe not.
I can go back there. Hang on.
No, I can see. We have them doing that twice. I think, we have them doing it 10th grade, then again in 12th grade. Just because, sometimes things change and kids they might think they want to do one thing and then, I mean, for crying out loud, I think as adults, we're not sure what we want to do sometimes, but, from between 10th and 12th grade, lots of times that changes. Maybe they've tried something at Buckeye and they didn't like it, or maybe they've thought they wanted to do one job and started working somewhere else. So we revisit that in the 12th grade. And we also have them creating resumes. We have them creating cover letters. We have them creating references, all of those things as well. So all of that will be found in that folder. So they should be ready to go. So.
That's awesome. Does anyone have questions for Heather while she's on? She did graciously share this with us. She has embedded the links that she's used. So this is in your electronic copy or your electronic folders that you have a copy of it. You look like you have a question. You have one?
Sometimes
Okay.
I always look like.
Oh.
But she started that in middle school.
She starts that with, she has activities as early as 6th grade, right,
Okay.
Heather?
And then she does it
Look
10th and
away, don't
12th.
get dizzy. I'm scrolling back up.
Yes, I have it. Well, lots of times it has to, as soon as transition starts. So I have on there, if we have a 6th grader that will turn 14 in that year, to call me and we'll create a plan, but then we start officially in 7th grade.
Thank you.
Yes. When transition plans begin.
Mhm.
And they've been doing a really good job of following this, and it gives our both our middle school and our high school have intervention times where they meet with their caseloads. They have their students that they have on their caseloads in those intervention periods. So we created that in the buildings also, so that they had the opportunity to work on these with their students. So
I do have a separate slide we're going to work on this afternoon. If you guys are not staying for the afternoon and you want the slide, I have a slide that's just for Ohioans jobs that we walk through some of the activities, and we have a Padlet that gives you examples of activities that you can share with students. So if you can't be here this afternoon, shoot me an email so I remember to give you the slide for that, because it's not online, because it's for the in-person part. All right, Heather, thank you so much for sharing.
thanks.
Today.
I apologize for that being such a fiasco. Sorry.
No problem. It was fine.
Thank you.
Hey, we pivot, Heather, we pivot, right?
So that's what we do in education.
That's right, that's right.
All right, everyone, we're going to go back in your PowerPoint to the Career Tech Recruiting Special Populations. You do have a handout in your folder. This is brand new, hot off the presses. And if you've had a chance to kind of preview the slides that I put together, those of you who are in cohort 3s and you've been looking at your one needs assessment and your one plan, you may notice that some of these questions are tied into the career readiness section of questions on your one plan and your one needs assessment. So with that being said, this toolkit was put together to ensure that students with disabilities have equal access to career tech education, as well as their families have the supports in place that they need to help make decisions during transition meetings so that students with disabilities are successful when they choose career technical pathways. So this first slide here is just talking about the research, which we all know students with disabilities are much more tactile learners. They learn with their hands. They have different learning styles than other students. And career tech has been very, very beneficial for students with disabilities. There's also a couple other research findings on there about students in foster care and homeless students and the success that they have when they are enrolled in career tech pathways. So the toolkit is broken down into 3 different areas. The first is CTE recruitment, and one of the main charges I have had as a career tech planning district consultant has been working with career centers on what does a communication plan look like between their partner districts and their own district when it comes to students with disabilities and the supports that will be in place for them so that they're successful. Some of the questions that are asked as you go through the toolkit are, do you know as a partner district what special population groups are in your district that are accessing career tech? And by special populations, I'm not just referring to students with disabilities. They could be homeless students, teen parents, students in foster care, students in the military. There's a list of 7 or 8 different types of subgroups of students that we consider special populations. And then another big area to look at is, are your students with disabilities accessing career technical education in the same ratio or percentage as the number of students in your district that have been identified with special needs? So if you're sending 90% of your students with disabilities to career tech, are your transition plans and your transition plan meetings really taking into consideration what your students want and need? Because while we know those types of educational pathways are successful for students with disabilities, we need to ensure that partner districts are not just pushing all of their students into career tech in case that isn't really the pathway that's best for that student. So student choice and voice is always super important, and looking at some of those recruitment and action planning steps around recruitment are very beneficial. Sean and Autumn have already shared today, but what are those other partnerships is strategy number 2 that might help students be successful. And sometimes students with disabilities are also in that other subgroup of low socioeconomic status. And OOD is very helpful when it comes to assisting students with some of the materials and tools that they might need to be successful in career tech and in the workforce. And so just taking a look at the different types of populations that are accessing the outside agencies of your district are super important also. And then finally, strategy 3 is reflection and action planning and removing those other barriers to access. So career centers have traditionally had open houses, and then they'll invite students back to shadow a program with a family member if they have shown interest in that program. But what other opportunities are we providing in our partner districts for families, not just students, but families to access career tech education and understand what those different pathways mean? And so this toolkit is really, like I said, there are questions at the end that very much align with the one needs assessment when it comes to the career readiness piece. And I just wanted you guys to have a copy of this so that you can take this back and start having those conversations with your intervention specialists and your special education directors and your career navigators about the different areas to consider when you're talking about career tech education for students with disabilities.
I think that Jeff is on, right, Scott? Yeah. So we should be right on track. We're going to take a 10-minute break just to make sure I can get things set up. You are going to be handed out that book. So if you need to go to the restroom, stretch break, get water, coffee, tea, now's the time. We will be back at 10:10 to get started with Mr. Berk. Okay, you should be good to go now, Jeff.
Okay. It's still not letting me share, but that's okay. You don't need to worry about it.
Scott will keep working on it, but
Okay. Yep. No biggie. So thank you guys so much. I'm honored to present the State Support Team 12 in your region to kind of talk about myself. I go around and talk a lot of different places around the state dealing with my current position as a career tech director, and very fortunate to kind of talk about my number one thing I'm proud of, and the thing I enjoy the most is talking about our students with disabilities. And the big thing with that is because of my own personal experience. When I go in and I talk with our students, I'm very fortunate at my CTPD, we have a teacher academy program. And when I come in and I speak with the students, I start off talking that, you know, this is who I am and I have a disability. And it's very interesting to kind of see how the students' faces react to that. And then I kind of go through and I'm able to share my story with them and other people. So I like to start all the way back, you know, pretty much started off normal childhood, kindergarten through roughish around 4th grade. Everything seemed all right. I was a little stubborn. Had a 1st grade teacher that I didn't like, so I refused to do any work because we all know that's how we get what we want. And you know, my mom and the teacher decided to hold me back a year. That was in 1st grade. And then things were pretty normal after that. The next year I had a teacher I loved and I would do anything for, and everything went great. Then around 5th grade, got into a bicycle accident. Ended up breaking my arm and hitting my head on a kind of funny, the house around the block from where I lived. And the gentleman that lived there was the sheriff, and his sheriff car was parked on the road, and my friends were racing, and one cut me off, and I kind of flipped over the handlebars and hit my head on the sheriff's car and broke my arm. And that's when I started to see things really change in my life. School started going down, no matter how hard I tried. Just wasn't able to grasp the concepts. I was tested and qualified for an IEP at that time. My original disability indicator was DH, developmentally handicapped, and went to a separate room. This was in the late 80s. Went to a separate room for a lot of classes, but very fortunate for me was I had a very good friend by the name of Jamie, who he stayed my friend. You know, when it kind of fell into some of those name calling, being picked on type stuff that some students experience, especially when you have to go to the special ed room, as it was titled at that time. He really, you know, stayed by my side, encouraged me, and really helped me continue to move along with some of the different goals and things that we had at that time, which the big thing for us was sports. He was already playing football and basketball, and he talked me into go ahead and join the football team. And, you know, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'5". Now I'm 300 and some pounds, but at that time, 5th, 6th grade, I was probably like 6'1". So I was really tall for my age. And so came out and played football and actually ended up really enjoying it. Got a chance to feel normal, be around, you know, all the other peers that allowed me to feel accepted and that everybody got along. In the 6th grade year, my mom and dad got a divorce. So that led to my mom and I moving to a different city. And I started in a new school and started off that year, was still in the DH classroom. That was in 7th grade. And the only time we really came out of that classroom was to go to a advisory period that they had for the whole school. And the thing that was really tough was our DH class at that time was on the other side of the building at the end of the hall. And so, you know, all the other students, your peers see you coming out, and the only time they ever see you is just for that period. And, you know, so at that time, I would say 7th grade, I'm probably about 6'3" at the time. So very big in stature, and got questioned by the basketball coach to come out and play basketball as well. So I went ahead and did that and really enjoyed playing basketball and football, and was really starting to see the athletic side of things really bring a lot of positive attention to me. But there was still that academic side where, you know, really struggled and you know, had a hard time understanding a lot of things. Math came a little easy at that time in my life, but reading was really, really hard. My reading comprehension and reading fluency was very low, and it was something that really needed to be worked on. 8th grade, I was very fortunate. I got a teacher who is now currently a school counselor, but she was what I needed. I was one that really started turning into somebody who, whatever the paper, whatever the IEP said, that just says why I can't do things. So she would give me things to challenge me, and I'd make comments to her like, the paper says I can't do that. And she would get very upset with that and kind of put me in place in a way, and let me know that anything I want to do, I can do. It's just a matter of doing it. And so she started pushing me out a little bit, doing some co-taught inclusion classes, and 8th grade went really well. By the end of 8th grade-ish, I'm standing around 6'4", 6'4.5". Once again, very tall, and it's kind of funny because I ended up playing football, but at the time I really enjoyed basketball more than football. And everybody was talking to me, you're tall, you're going to get taller, and you can get drafted right out of high school to the NBA. And I got coaches telling me everything. And so I, going into my freshman year, said, you know what, I'm done with football. I'm not going to play football anymore. I'm just going to focus on basketball. And fortunately for me, I have 3 older brothers, and my oldest brother was very active in my life. And he sat me down and said, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? What are you looking for? And nobody in my family had ever went to college. And, it's a big push in school. Everybody's saying, you got to go to college to achieve your different career goals and so forth. So I said, well, I want to go to college. And I said, I'm going to go play basketball, or I'll just go pro. Because at that time I had some coaches saying that was a possibility. And my brother was fortunate to point out to me that the rest of my family, we were very tall, but we didn't really get over 6'5". And once we hit around that size, we started going wide versus height anymore. And so he pointed out that, look at the family, tell me what basketball players in the NBA are 6'5". And at that time, I'm like, well, Michael Jordan's 6'6". And he's like, and can you dribble like Michael Jordan? No, you play center. It's look at football. Football is the place. There's a chance for a scholarship. There's a chance to go pro. And fortunately for me, I listened to him and started focusing on football. And basketball kind of got drifted away after freshman year because I tore up my knee in football and had to have surgery. And that put me out for basketball season to the point where I eventually kind of stopped playing basketball as far as competing in high school and focused fully on football. And the real funny story is I never really watched college football growing up. Didn't really watch NFL football. I enjoyed playing it. But outside of that, I really didn't have a good understanding of what all college athletics was about. So at this time, I start to understand, okay, I want to do football. I want to go to college. I want to be the first in the family to go to college. And one of my teachers, Mrs. Moore, who's since retired, and was one that was very instrumental in my life and really helped me understand how to work past my disability, how to start to learn to compensate for different things, and to be able to achieve the success in what I was wanting. And her big push was, you need to make sure that you are focused and you work hard and you can get whatever you want. And she's a very talented intervention specialist. Not just, regular students that she had going to college, but she probably had maybe 10 different Division I football, basketball athletes that she helped mentor through my high school to get on to the next level, whether that was Ohio State, West Virginia, Michigan State. So we were very fortunate to have her on staff. And she really, sat down and pointed out things. And then unfortunately for me, I had a counselor who really was kind of, in lack of better terms on my part, old school mindset, that, you're a student with a disability. This is what your options are. This is where you're headed. And that really bothered me. So at that time, which is kind of funny now looking at my position as a career tech director, but at that time, joint vocational schools was looked at a little different than they are now with career tech and tech prep and how everything are aligned. So she called me into her office and said, hey, Jeff, you really need to go to the career center if you want to be able to make a living and have a job and be able to have a family one day. And I'm like, well, I want to go to college. And I'll never forget. And I did a lot of interviews when I was at West Virginia University, when I was kind of telling my story there, where, the comments was made, you'll never step foot on a college campus. And that really hit hard. And it was a thing where, I go back to class and I sit down and I'm kind of kicking it around in my head and, am I wasting my time? Am I able to really do that? Am I kidding myself? Am I wasting Mrs. Moore and other teachers' time with this goal of mine that can't really be achieved because, I have my counselor telling me that that's not really an option for me. And once again, fortunately, my teacher really pushed to get it to where that I focused on the academics, challenged myself. She said, look, Jeff, if you're looking at wanting to go to college, one, we got to move you away from resource-based classes. We have got to get you out into inclusion classes. So after my freshman year, they started making that switch, moved me out about a half-day schedule within inclusion classes. By the time I get to junior year, it's 100% inclusion, and the work is much more challenging. But at the same time, I knew I had this goal and what I wanted to do. And there was a handful of other teachers that were great along the process that really helped me. But Mrs. Moore was always the one that I could always turn to, I could go to. And I'll never forget my sophomore year, she was working with another student, and he ended up going to play football at Bowling Green State University. And he was the star player on our football team. He was a senior, I was a sophomore. And, he had seen me talking with her and everything. And one day when we had practice and when we were the last ones to come out of the locker room, and he kind of grabbed me and talked to me and was like, you will achieve this. You've listened to what Mrs. Moore says. You do everything she says, and you'll be playing college football. That's where your focus needs to be. Tune everybody else out. Focus on what she's telling you to do. And, I really took that to heart because, once again, I knew that he had a disability because, once again, he was, with her quite a bit. And most, all the students that she worked with were students on IEPs. And so I'm like, okay, he's making it happen. He's listening to her. I need to really listen to her and do what she says. And then it can really happen for me and my goals can come true. So going on through high school and, things are going really good. Our football team's doing really well. We have a coaching change. We bring a new coach in. He actually came up from Florida. He was a coach down in Boca Raton by the name of Jay Mitten. He came in my junior year, and he was well known to get kids in college. If you wanted to go to college and you put in the work, he had the connections and he would do anything he could to help you. And I was very fortunate because at that time he had Steve and Greg Belisari playing at Ohio State that he coached in Florida, and then he had Corey Ivy and Perlo Bastine who were playing at West Virginia University that he coached down in Florida. And which we always laughed because Perlo in West Virginia, for anybody ever does history in West Virginia football, it used to be third down in Perlo because every team threw to him on third down to get a first down. He was a defensive back, so they'd get him all the time. But it was okay. Here's a coach that has these connections and somebody who's saying it can happen. And so junior year goes well, start getting recruits. Boston College, Pittsburgh, a handful of different schools come in and start recruiting me. And at that time, not really fully understanding what the NCAA eligibility process was and what it all looked like. Fortunately for me, Mrs. Moore and then a couple other assistant principals were working to make sure I was in the right classes and doing what I needed to do to meet that. And then it came time for the ACT. And I was very fortunate. She gave up her time to do the ACT with me one-on-one with extended time and give me a chance to get the best score possible. But unfortunately, it was very challenging and I didn't get the score that I needed. So when that score came back, I was very discouraged, really thinking, maybe the counselor was right. This is not the option. This is not something for me. And so fortunately, Ms. Moore explained to me that, you get more chances and we'll do it again. And we did it a couple more times. And then eventually we super scored it and it came out with the score that I needed to be able to accept a scholarship through NCAA eligibility and then also be accepted at West Virginia University. My senior year was probably one of the greatest years ever. We went to the Division I state championship for football here in Ohio. And, academics was going great, just no concerns or anything. Everything was perfect. come summertime to report to West Virginia University for football camp. So we had to report about a month earlier than the regular student body, and we got put in a hotel and everything to live while we go through camp. And then like a few days before I was to report, we get a phone call that I hadn't been accepted to West Virginia yet, that my final transcripts had not been sent in by my school counselor for them to do their final acceptance and for the NCAA to do their final review. So my football coach found out about that, and him and Mrs. Moore worked hard to get everything submitted. So fortunately, everything was submitted and approved by that time that I had to report. So I was very fortunate. The other big blessing, so, I talk about Miss Phipps was my 8th grade teacher. Mrs. Moore was my high school teacher. That really helped me a lot. My next blessing was for me is when I went to college, my roommate was my high school quarterback. And he's to this day, he's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. He was a National Merit Scholar finalist, really, really smart. And he was my roommate, and we knew each other really well. And we had a class together that I had to write my first college paper. And then for that paper, you had to make copies. There was about 75 students in the class. You had to make copies of this paper. You had to pass it out to all the students, and then you had to get up and have a PowerPoint and do a presentation about it. And so I get up and pass out the papers, and I start doing the presentation. Presentation goes good, but there's a lot of errors in my paper. And I remember the professor kind of called me over after the class and talked about some of the issues within the paper. And, he highly recommended that I reach out to student services to get some academic support, and kind of being a hardhead. And I tell every kid I work with now, don't do what I did, because I kind of buckled down and said, if I can't do this on my own, I don't deserve to be here. And, that was not the best route to take. But it was my mindset, which then helped me to really work harder, learn how to start studying, learn how to take notes. When I write papers, to rely on someone to proofread them, to really work on those areas. And I was very fortunate because that roommate of mine, he would do that for me. And he'd give me great feedback, and I trusted him, and I wasn't embarrassed because I felt comfortable with him and I knew him versus some of the other options that were available at that time for me. Unfortunately, he was only there for the first year and a half, and then he decided to transfer out. And that was a thing at that time that I really had to learn to crack down. And unfortunately, at that point, we're looking at 2002, really starting to learn how to use technology for a lot of accommodations, learning how to compensate for some of those deficiencies and so forth that I had, and was able to really start to understand how to study, something that was never really taught to me, something I really never understood until that point when I really had to force myself to learn what is my route, what is my way to study. So things started going much better. Actually got married that year after my second year in college. My wife was from back home, and she came over and moved to West Virginia with me. So she helped out, with some of the proofreading and things of that nature after that point. But I did start to see some changes within the classes, and from learning how to study, how to take notes, I started seeing a change in my skills and my abilities to complete the task. And as I'm turning in papers, my wife would, proofread them, and there'd be minimal things that she would recommend. And I'm getting positive responses back from the professors and so forth. And, at the time I didn't catch it, but now I kind of look at things a little different with age. So while I was at West Virginia, I had a strength coach by the name of Mike Barwis. And Mike Barwis was at West Virginia. And then when Rich Rodriguez left West Virginia and went to Michigan, Mike Barwis followed him up to Michigan. And then after Rich left Michigan, Mike stayed up there and opened his own training facility where he trained college and professional athletes. And one of the big things that Mike is known for now is while he was at Michigan, one of the players there was in a car accident with his brother, and his brother became paralyzed from the waist down. And so one of the things that Mike's done is he has a organization now, but he works with people to work on getting it to where they're able to get up and start walking and moving. So seeing that, and Mike did a TED talk, and this part really stuck out to me, and I really, to myself, I think this may be kind of what things were for me, as far as in education, in academia. We have policies, we have procedures, and if you don't fit into those policies and procedures, you kind of, are the odd and get left out. And Mike's big thing was, and with that, just like in the medical world, you're paralyzed from the waist down, you're not going to get up and walk again. You're going to be wheelchair bound and so forth. However, the human body is amazing. And, if you put pressure to any part of the human body and really work it just as a muscle, like our brain, it can strengthen, and, things can happen. So I started thinking about when Mike was giving his speech, and I'm like, maybe that was part for me. And I look back, I had a lot of tests done and so forth back in elementary when I got into that bicycle accident and I hit the car with my head. And, I started talking with people like maybe it was more of a traumatic brain injury type of thing that kind of triggered when all of this started, because that's when everything started to happen. And I'm like, is it a thing where over time of being pushed and working the brain and things in that nature have really allowed my academic skills to grow? And another example for me, my wife, she was in her early 30s. She had a stroke. And to see where she was when she had her stroke, where she couldn't walk, she couldn't talk, she couldn't write, all of those types of things, and to see where she is now and going through that process and talking with the doctors and how they pointed out that, the human body learns to reroute the communications from your brain to the rest of your body. All that neurological stuff starts changing, and your body learns to compensate for it and how to do it differently. And it really brought to me to start to think like, could this be some of the things that have led to my later academic success versus that time, through, sixth grade through high school and the earlier years in college. So, that's a thing where I challenge a lot of teachers. I challenge a lot of students with, just because you may be somewhere right now, it doesn't mean that's where you're going to end, and you need to put your body through the stress and the challenges to strengthen whatever it may be to get you to where you want to be. So whether that's academically with your brain, or whether that is physically for athletics. And I've been very fortunate, and I tell all the students, and okay, I have a learning disability. I was on an IEP in school. And here's the success I had. I graduated college in 3.5 years with my bachelor's. I got my master's shortly thereafter. I could get a doctorate if I really wanted to go back in school and do any papers, but don't want to do that. So I'm 3 classes shy of my doctorate, but I'm good. I don't need that. There's really no money in education for it anyway. So it's one of those things where, I like to talk with the students and let them know these stories, so that especially for our students with disabilities, they can kind of look and see and kind of go, okay, I can see myself in him. I can see the challenges he has. And my other benefit is, I try to use the sports, try to use the football piece, because, as a lot of us know, and a lot of fathers are a little absent from the educational process with our students with disabilities. The mothers take a much bigger role usually. And, using the football side of things to try to bring more dads in, to try to get dads to have a better understanding of where their child is and what they can still achieve. I know for me, my father never really attended any IEP meetings or anything. It was always my mom. She did all of that stuff. But, with the football talk, and it really helps to close some of those gaps. And then, throughout my football career, I was very fortunate. I was very successful with the career at West Virginia University. I was 2-time all-conference, ended up being academic all-American, second team. And one of the biggest awards I ever won was actually by the College Football Hall of Fame, National Football Foundation. I was recognized as one of the top scholar athletes in the nation of all levels of college football. They select 15 a year. And then from that 15, they select the final winner. But the 15, you receive an $18,000 scholarship. You go to the College Football Hall of Fame banquet in New York. You get your picture and stuff in the College Football Hall of Fame for earning that recognition. But it was, one of the things to sit there and to think, like, here is someone that a school counselor said this cannot happen, and then to end up being one of the top 15 academic performers of all divisions of NCAA college football players. And I just sit there and I think, and I'm like, wow, how does this even happen? And I was very fortunate because with that, I met Michael Munoz was a recipient of that, Anthony Munoz. His dad, Anthony Munoz, who played for the Cincinnati Bengals, the only Bengal currently in the NFL Hall of Fame. And at that time, Anthony was getting ready to start his own agency to represent clients going into the NFL. So through that event, I was debating on, was I done with football? Had a lot of injuries and things like that. That the pain and so forth was starting to get to the end for me, and decided to go ahead and give it a shot and have Anthony represent me going through the draft, and had a chance for, if you didn't get drafted, but had a chance for a few free agent offers. But also at that time, got offered a chance to become an intervention specialist. And the kids, when I tell this story, the whole classroom all look at me like, they're like, you are dumb. Because I always tell them I turned down football to become a teacher. And I say, one, I get to help people. Two, it's a guaranteed living, and start to explain to them that, the NFL life is, everybody's not millionaires, and it doesn't work that way for everybody, and try to get them to really understand that side of things, and trying to give them hope of, me, my path, and how I went into teaching, and because I wanted to help. I wanted to truly help people who were like me. I wanted to be that Mrs. Moore. I wanted to be that Mrs. Phipps, that if another staff member was to doubt somebody, that they could turn to me. And I've been very fortunate in my career. I was an intervention specialist. After that, my thing was, I'm like, okay, I'm helping roughly, 50 to 100 kids a year. How do I help more? And then I was able to move on to be a special ed supervisor, grades 7 through 12 or 7 through 23. And that was awesome. Really loved it. It was great to work with so many students and so many parents, and to come be able to show the hope. And once again, when I started teaching, I was fortunate. I got a chance to go back to the district in my home school where I graduated from. So a lot of people knew my story, and it kind of brought light and hope for a lot of students to kind of see me and to be able to share the story. I was special ed supervisor for 3 years, and our superintendent came to me and she's like, Jeff, you're doing a great job, but I really want you to work more hands-on with the kids. I want you in the building with the kids. So what do you think about, becoming an assistant principal? And at that point, I said, you know what, I think you're right. I miss the kids, because after I did the supervisor job for 3 years, a lot of the students that I knew were graduated, and was starting to lose that connection with the students in the building as much because of all the paperwork that the supervisors have to do. So I'm like, all right. So I went and was an assistant principal. Did that for 3 years at the high school, and then was very fortunate. The superintendent then came to me. After that, the head principal had one left to be a superintendent. We hired a new head principal. He came for a year, and then after a year, he was like, yeah, he was rehire. He's like, oh, this is too much work. I didn't plan on doing all of this. So he stepped away, and the super came and said, how would you like to be the head building principal? So I was very fortunate. I said, sure, I would love to do it. I did that for 4 years. And then at that point, anybody who's been a head principal, it is extremely stressful. My kids were young. I have twins, a boy and a girl. They're freshmen in high school now. So at that time, they were going to be in 7th grade the following year. And I said, I think it's time to make a change. And so I was looking at making a change, and I was very fortunate to land where I am now as a career tech director, and really get a chance to help all students, and especially, the students with disabilities, to help them get aligned, whether that's through some of our tech prep scholarships that we have for our students in our programs to continue on to college, the CCP classes that we work within our programs, just to really give the students that chance. I had one student beginning of this year. We were registering them for our community college His program, he's in our construction program, and they actually earn a short-term certification through our community college because they do so many CCP classes within their program. And like his mom, when we were registering him, she kind of was like, why are we doing this? And I was able to sit there and explain to her about how many college credits he was going to get, the certifications he was going to receive, and how it was going to benefit him overall. And he's a great athlete, and he'll probably receive a Division I. He's got Division I colleges looking at him, chance to go on to the next level. And but for that opportunity for him to get that while he's at school, and for those, in the career tech industry, we work closely with Mark Perna as far as, getting our students to understand the different branches on the tree, and where they want to go within careers and so forth. And, that's a big thing I tell all of our students is, what type of lifestyle do you want to live, and take advantage to change your family's trajectory. You take advantage of career tech opportunities that are here in the state of Ohio. You have a great opportunity that you will make way more money than your family had previously. You're going to have a more rewarding career, and really push the students toward that, understanding of how it can benefit all of us. And then also to make sure to nix that misunderstanding that even I had back when I was in high school, that just because you do a career tech program does not mean you cannot go on to a Division I school, whether that's just for academics or whether it's for athletics. And we're very fortunate. We have one of our students this year, just looking on the athletic side, who's going to Akron, University of Akron next year. We have one that's a junior this year who's getting heavily recruited, and they're all in our career tech programs, and they're doing great things. So I see it as another avenue to really bring awareness to for students to understand the benefits they have, how to work past the struggles, and to achieve whatever goals that they have for themselves. And whether that's, we had a conversation the other day with one of our HVAC students, and she's like, well, I really wanted to do nursing. I really want to be a nurse, and really working with her on the understanding of how to use the HVAC skill that she's received to get hired on with one of our big hospitals here, and to then transition into a nursing role where they'll pay for her to get her STNA and her LPN, and really taking advantage of all this. And I really attribute, my mindset and guiding the students back to those struggles that I had, the teachers that I had that really went above and beyond to help me achieve my goals. And so I always look at it every day that's what I'm here for, is to share my story and to let the students see, here's somebody who was doubted, here's somebody who on paper would not look like they could ever be sitting in front of me today, being an educational leader, being a teacher, writing a book, things in that nature. So that's where I feel very fortunate. And that's kind of why, when I was working with people with writing the book, where we took disability and put the cross through the disc, even though it makes it hard when you're marketing on Amazon and things like that, because there's no strike through line that's easy with HTML coding. But it's a thing of, look at your disability as an ability. It's not the disc part. It's the ability of how you overcome things, how you fight through, how you work through, and how you're able to achieve your goals and whatever your dreams are, because you have a special ability. It's just a matter of learning what that ability is and then achieving it. And even with my own children, they're both on IEPs. And the good thing is they've never doubted their ability to achieve whatever their goals are, because when they've had anybody ever say anything, I tell them all the time, just look at me. I'm in the same shoes. I was in the same shoes that you currently are, and try to really encourage them and get them to fully understand how it is an ability and how that ability can change their life. Thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. If there's any questions or anything like that, I'd love to answer them.
Yep. So if anyone online has a question, you can unmute or put it in the chat. And if there's anyone here that has question, comment, feel free. I don't know about you guys, but I got cold chills. This is awesome. We are so thankful that you were able to share. And I think this is really, this is what we can take back. When we talk about transition, the whole morning we talked about transition. We talked about the student-led process. Sherry shared about CTE. We talked about graduation and not making those determinations for our kids to say they can't do it too soon. This is our why. This should be our why.
I have a question.
Okay, Curry has a question. Yep, go ahead.
What do you say to, so if you're in our shoes and you're trying to align them with goals that are SMART goals, realistic goals, you know, and their passions and their interests and their talents, and they say, you know, I want to be a professional basketball player, and you know, I mean, they're not even on the basketball team, you know, is it how, I don't want to be discouraging in that way. I just want to know how you would handle that with your experience.
Definitely, and we all experience that one. And that's a big one, you know, to kind of have that heart-to-heart talk, kind of like my brother did with me in a way. And once again, trying to be a little more gentle because I don't want to discourage, as you said. But what I'll do is kind of talk with them and say, okay, so basketball is what you want to do. You want to go to the pros. Let's sit here and let's go through and determine right now, okay, are you currently playing for your high school team? Yes or no? Are you currently on an AAU team? Yes or no? Do you currently have strength training that you're doing in school or with a private strength conditioning coach? Yes or no? So I'll answer those ones first. So let's say they come and say, because unfortunately this happens a lot of times, no, they don't play high school ball. No, they don't do AAU. They just kind of play in the park. So then my thing would say, okay, so you want to go play college or you want to play ball, you want to go pro. These are the things you first have to do. Now, no matter who you are, athletics come to an end. Everybody has to retire at some point and have a different career. So now let's start to talk about what type of career that you may like off of your interests that you can move into once that athletic career time is done. Or may even say to them that, you know, if you get injured or if something major happens that totally changes those plans that are out of your control, you have to have another way. So let's look at, you know, the career cluster surveys or whatever it may be and see what areas you may be interested in, because everybody has to have a backup plan. And then I throw out, you know, some examples, you know, for example, like, and this is a little more dating, but I'd come up with newer ones like, you know, look at Greg Odom. He was at Ohio State. He was meant to be going to be this top draft pick. He gets drafted and he's been injured ever since and never came out to be what it was supposed to be. He didn't last very long in the NBA. I'll throw out some of those examples, and then I'll say, okay, now we've kind of got this for where you're looking at wanting to go career-wise. You talk about you want to do basketball, you want to go pro. So as we're coming up with this plan for the career, you can also now start to say how you're going to start doing what you're going to do athletically. So now, you know, it's not discouraging them saying that it can't happen or won't happen, but it at least gives them an eye of, oh, I need to do this. This is a lot more than I thought to do the athletic piece, but you're also still getting that career interest and kind of giving them a guide of things they may want to go down that path. You know, and I'll use my own son. He plays baseball. He's heard so many war stories about football. He's scared of football, and from me, and we sit there and we talk about possible jobs. So he's interested in our HVAC program here. And his friends were like, oh, why would you want to do that? Because you're going to break your back the rest of your life. And then I was fortunate to have that conversation like, okay, you'll start off as a technician and so forth. However, if you do it right, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it may be, you could flip it and own your own HVAC business. And now you're in the office. And we have the conversation about college. And he's like, well, if I can play ball in college, I might be interested. But other than that, I don't think the college route's really what I want to do. And so I'm just able to kind of piggyback on there, like, okay, college may be, because let's say you go and you work somewhere in the HVAC industry, and I give them an example of one of our students who finished up a short-term certificate at Sinclair College his senior year while in our HVAC program, and the company he was working for gave him a $6 pay raise and retroed it back to his first day working there, and he had worked there already for a year and a half. So he got a big check for like $20,000-$30,000 because that company wanted to keep him on staff because he was extremely talented in the skills that they needed. And I know I'm kind of deterring here a little bit, but just kind of giving both avenues and getting them to understand, here's the athletic side of things and here's everything you need to do. But also, no matter who you are as an athlete, it will come to an end.
Go ahead.
What about a student, had a meeting last week with a student and his mom. He's in athletics, he's a junior, be a senior next year. but they both, mom and son, are using his IEP as an excuse of why he can't achieve certain things. How do you handle that or combat that of, no, you can do this? And I told the mom, because she'd come to my office after, and I said, you need to stop using his IEP as an excuse. And so, which may be a little harsh, but it is true. So how do I help that student, even taking mom out of it, because that's what he's hearing at home, but how do you help that student that, well, I can't do this, or because of I have a disability, I have an IEP. Okay, so what do you say to that?
Sherry says, give him Jeff's book.
So, yes, I would like to.
And it's one of those things, and I mean, and I look back to me in 8th grade, that was me in 8th grade. You know, I kind of with Miss Phipps was, the paper says I can't do this. The paper says X, Y, and Z. And I didn't even go too deep into this. Like, her and I laugh to this day, and I would never recommend any teacher to ever do this or think about it. I was very big, and I kind of stood up to her, and she put me in my place. She grabbed me and placed me down on the table. and kind of said, I don't give a damn what that paper says. And it's a thing of, that was her way of getting it across to me. But the challenge is, in the conversations that I have with a lot of students, as far as those that really want to use it more as a crutch versus, the assistance that they need, is this is good for your K-12 education. Once you graduate high school and you are gone, this really doesn't do anything to help you in a job. It doesn't really do much to help you necessarily in college as the IEP, because colleges refer to the ETR. And I got a lot of students I've worked with a lot of colleges that decline really any accommodations. And those, and I sit there and I shake my head, and for their reasoning for why they decline those accommodations. I mean, I submitted for even an industry credential for a couple of our students with disabilities for extended time, and they got declined. And these are our low CD level students. And I'm like, I can't believe you guys are declining this. And they're like, well, we go by, ADA and so on and so forth. So just having that conversation with them of, okay, what is your goal? So your goal for a job is to work in a manufacturing, to, construction, whatever it may be, auto mechanic, so forth. When you go, and this was one that was used at our local career center here, is when you go into that career field, such as they always like to use vet science, I bring my dog in to be groomed, and you don't follow what we're asking for, that training, and all of a sudden my poodle comes home bald, and there's no IEP accommodation, there is no retakes and so forth for those things. So I kind of have those conversations of, we're trying to build your skills now, so when you do hit the workforce, that they'll provide basic accommodations for you, but depending on what it is you want to do, you have to be able to grasp those skills and to be able to perform a task. So if we continue to say this can't be done because of whatever reason, we're hurting you. We're not helping prepare you for what reality is going to be. The IEP will come to an end, and then it's going to have to really make a change. And at that point, we're not here to assist you on that transition. Now you're learning it all on your own. So it's going to come, Mom, it's going to come at him 5 times harder than if you let us do this now. Let us push him, let us challenge him. And, my second year as an intervention specialist, I'll never forget, I had a resource freshman English class, and I had a young lady who, her family was always that way, as far as you need to do, her level is this, the IEP says she can only do this. So my big thing in the class, I pushed the kids, at that time it was OGT, the writing test. I pushed the students for writing. We would do 5-paragraph essays. And I had this one family that was like, oh my gosh, how dare you ask a resource kid to write a 5-paragraph essay? And I said, well, I still got to expose them to grade level standards, but here's how I'm grading. I'm grading on capitalization. I'm grading on punctuation. And I went through the 5 things I looked at for grading, which matched, their ability level and so forth. And I said, but if I don't ever push your daughter to do this, she'll never have that experience, and it will hold her back in the long haul. And And they fought me tooth and nail that whole year. I had so many meetings with them and the principal and director of special services and so forth. And I laughed because that young lady ended up going on and graduating with an associate's. And she came back one day and she's like, I just graduated, I got my associate's. And I said, remember when you told me it wasn't at your level? And she's like, well, it wasn't. And I said, but if it was, you may have not ever been where you are today. And I said, when I do my grading and I'm looking at those things, I'm grading on your level, but I'm going to push you to an area that you've never been pushed. Because her whole experience K through 8th grade, the most anybody ever asked her to do was write one sentence. And then all of a sudden, here comes me saying, write this essay. And it was like, oh my gosh, this guy, what is he thinking? He's crazy. And that was the big piece I was trying to get her dad and for her to understand was, I need to push you to an area, no different than training for sports. I'm going to push you to a level you think you can't go, but I'm not going to let you fail. I'm going to have you on that cliff, but you're never going to fall. And that was a thing where, I've personally seen a good experience and the success of it. But it's having those conversations and a lot of times, especially at the high school level, it's the grade and graduation is the only thing the parents care about, and kind of making sure, locking that part up where they don't worry about that as much to allow me to challenge, allow me to push, and then connecting it back to, once they graduate and accept that diploma, things are going to come fast. And if we don't help you now, you're going to be more on your own.
Thank you.
And another resource we can share is that we'll add it in the shared folder. We've shared it before, but the chart that we have given out that is an IEP versus, so it says high school versus post-secondary, that gives the example of what's under an IEP, under IDEA, and what's offered through ADA. Because if he or the parent or he thinks they're going to college, it's our duty to start weaning those services and prepare them for success, because that, like Jeff said, that IEP doesn't go. And there are things that we write in IEPs that's based off IDEA that doesn't exist under ADA. No one's going to give you guided notes. No one's going to take half of the answers off of the multiple choice test. There's just some things we have to think about. So I'll make sure you have a copy of that too. I'm sure I know your district has it, but we'll make sure it's in the folder for today too. All right, anyone else here or online? All right, well, thank you so much. We appreciate you, and we appreciate all of the information you've been able to give our region.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me, and I greatly appreciate it. And hopefully everybody's able to take something away. And, hit me up. Anybody ever want to reach out to me on Twitter or anything like that, speak to your class, speak to your students or whatever, I'm more than willing to do that as well. So feel free to reach out. On Twitter, it's Jeff A. Berk, or you can send it, I'm trying to think what my email is real quick, because I don't use it very often.
I can give them your email.
Okay.
I'll give them your email, and if you guys, I pinned a tweet last night for SST 12 and me, so if you're on there and it has Jeff, I had tagged him in, so if you guys get on Twitter and look, you'll get all of us. You'll get SST 12 and me and Jeff and everybody. So, all right, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and we appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank y'all so much.
All right, guys. For those of you who are online, we are going to go ahead. Let me see if I can just share back super quick. We are gonna not do networking time. If you're online, if you want to scan this QR code in person, Holly's going to hand out the evaluations for you guys to do. You don't have to scan if you don't. You can just do the paper evaluations. If you are only here for the morning, we have certificates for you. If you're staying for the afternoon, you'll get a certificate for the afternoon. We'll get one whole one. Yes.